Welcome to Unfiltered with Mike Desaulniers on WILI 1400 AM 95.3 FM. In studio today is Curtis Ehler. He's our regular co-host, and you sit on the Board of Finance. You wear all kinds of hats in town.
That's right. Right now I'm on the Board of Finance and the Planning and Zoning Commission. I try to stay a regular fixture at the town council meetings, the town meetings. We actually just had ourselves a real fun town meeting before the town council meeting last week.
Oh, it was a crazy meeting. There were a couple issues that came up that kind of frosted me, and one was the total disregard for our charter. That was one, and the other was. They did all kind of budget transfers and things like this, and they decided to put separate the registrar's pay, which was it was compensation. Because I went and I did some research on that, and it was basically it wasn't a raise. It was compensation for work that is done. Basically, more mandates that came from the state. It was, to cover their additional work that the town council had previously already approved.
Walk me through this, Mike, because I want to make sure that I'm thinking of this correctly. The registrars haven't actually gotten any kind of permanent raise in their budget, even though the state of Connecticut has mandated this early voting for the last couple of cycles. Is that correct?
That's correct. Last year, there was extra money added in as a one-time deal. The year before, there was extra money added as a one-time deal. And each cycle, the council tells them, the next budget that comes up, next budget cycle, it'll be put in there, and it's never put in there. So they have to come back every single time and say, hey, basically, we're working for peanuts here, well under any kind of legal limit or anything like that, and
we're not talking about, when we talk about the additional work that's caused by the state mandating early voting, we're not talking about a small amount of work. I mean, when I think about an election being a day and the preparation to get ready for that day, early voting is it 14 days?
I believe it's 14 days. We have got a caller online. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, this is Kimberly Desaulniers, the Republican Registrar of Voters.
Hi, nice to have you on. We were just questioning a couple things concerning the early voting and all that. Curtis, we're just asking a question. It would probably be a great person to ask.
We were talking about the pay, the stipend, if you want to call it that the town council puts in the budget each year for the registrar's voters office.
Are you there?
Yes.
Hey, Kimberly, can you hear us a little better?
You cut out a little on me there.
All right, we'll try to keep it clear. We were just talking about the pay, or the stipend, if you want to call it that the town council puts into the budget each year for the registrar's of voters office.
Okay.
Is it true that there hasn't been a pay adjustment since the state has mandated early voting?
So right before early voting was mandated, there was a small increase right before. Since we figured out what early voting entails, there has not been an official increase. They 2 years ago, they did give us each $10,000. They split it up into more than one payment, and they fought us on it. Then last year, they gave us each $15,000. Again, they fought us on it, and then they split it up. Each year, they promise they're going to fix it. We've got to fix this, both the town council and the Board of Finance. They swear this isn't right. We've got to fix it. And then when the budget comes around again, they fight us on it again. This year, we did get it approved to put that $15,000 into the salary, and it would be spread out throughout the year. But the budget didn't pass. So even though there's precedent, even though they've agreed that the work has increased. They've agreed on the amount 2 years in a row, and then they agreed to put it in the budget. They agreed that the amount should be paid, and they do have the ability to approve it and go ahead and start paying us since our work starts now. The Democrats on the town council, I wasn't present, but from what I'm told, decided to, I don't know, go all out like their 10-year-olds and abstain from the vote. I don't know what, they didn't even have the guts to vote no. They abstained, every one of them. I'm not really sure what that was about. I heard that there were some laughs from the crowd when they did it. So maybe it wasn't as clever as they initially thought. Technically, by Robert's rules, the vote passed. When you have two or three yeses, 2 yeses, and 9 abstentions, the vote passes. But I believe that they are trying to reference something in the charter to keep us from being paid. I'm not really sure what's going on there.
That's right. I remember there was discussion around that vote because it was so strange to see so many abstentions. I mean, Mike, you never see that.
Right. It just, they came up to me earlier in the day, and they had told me that I had to abstain from the vote, and because of my close proximity to this vote. Now, go ahead.
I just want to say something about that. I find it very interesting that they keep forcing you to abstain when we still do have people employed by the school system that don't abstain for certain things. We have had people that, I'm not going to comment on anybody's personal relationship, but people that have definitely been accused of having a personal relationship with town employees that don't abstain from the vote on their pay. And those pay issues are direct to the person. When the registrar's office receives an increase, and this isn't a raise, I want to be clear, this isn't a raise. This is an adjustment because the work changed. A raise is when you get more money for doing the same thing you were already doing. That's a raise. If the job changed, it's not really a raise. It's an adjustment. If you were working 20 hours and now you're working 40 hours and they pay you for the 40 hours, that's not a raise. But when the registrar's office gets a pay adjustment, that adjustment follows the office, not the individual. If I leave office tomorrow, the next person in my place would have the same pay, that whatever follows that office. It's a specific amount to the position. When you pay a town manager or the town manager's assistant or a teacher, those salaries are specific to the individual. When another town manager comes in or another assistant is hired or another teacher is hired, that pay goes away and they're going to start fresh by how much experience does this person have, how bad do we want them, what are they negotiating. Those allotments are specific to the person. So it makes sense for somebody to abstain from that vote. When our pay is increased, our pay goes with the job, not with the person.
So when we're talking about your pay now, the town council took up the question of your pay now because it's August, right? And we're coming up on the fall, and that's where people traditionally think of as busy season for elections, right?
Well, remember, we have a primary, so our busy season is going to start right now because we are already staffing. We have a 7-day early voting primary. That the 7 days starts on August 3rd, which means right now we are hiring for 2 early voting locations for 7 days, multiple positions, making sure those are filled and preparing for everything that we have. We're only a couple weeks away from the start of early voting, so our busy season has already started. And it's not going to slow down because after that's where people are mistaken. So we just had a referendum in June. Before that, we had a referendum in May. Before that, we were preparing for that. Before that, we were preparing our own budget. We were doing a canvass. Before that, we were finishing everything up from our last election. So we haven't slowed down. And now we don't have anything specifically in July, but we are finishing up all of after the referendum or the election is over, there's still more work to be done. You have to now clean up everything. You have to do the paperwork. You have to do all the who voted, enter things into the computer. And then we are already preparing for the next step, which will be 7 days of early voting, 2 locations, then the primary day. And I want to be very clear that just because it's only a Democratic primary does not change the work of both registrars. Legally, the primary is the responsibility of both registrars. It doesn't matter if only one party is holding it. We both have the same responsibility as if both parties were holding one. And then we are going to go right from the August primary into the September budget referendum, and then right from the September budget referendum into early voting in November. Then we're going to have all the aftermath of a November election, and then we're going to go right into a canvass again. So there's not any downtime that some of these people think that there is.
I think there's a big misconnection or something's off because, we have somebody who's a couple people that used to be registrars, and they think that things are the same now. Some of them, I don't want to speak for both. I know one of them keeps bringing up that he was a registrar and he knows how the job is, and there's a difference between what the registrar's job was back in the day and what it is now in the requirements. Also, a big thing that a lot of people that came up at the meeting was, aren't they elected? Now, when you're elected, I'm elected on the town council. I can choose whether or not I show up or not, whether I show up late, whether I show up, on time, and how that works. Where your position is a little bit different.
Yes. And it always throws me when I hear the town council talk about responsibilities, because I don't, first of all, we've never had an election or referendum or anything held off because we didn't show up on time. How many times have we been sitting there waiting for the council to have a quorum, or people who just waltz in after things have already been discussed and start voting on it? We don't have the luxury of just waltzing in at any time we feel like it and getting up and waltzing out, or being on our phone the entire time, or some of the things that's happening on the council. The President of the United States is elected. He still has a salary because he has an actual job. There are towns where the mayor is elected, the selectmen are elected, but they still have a salary because they have a job. You can't compare that to a town council that is kind of supposed to show up every other week for a meeting and maybe some working sessions and things, but if they don't, nobody really, it is what it is. Maybe they show up, maybe they don't. Maybe they pay attention to the meeting, maybe they don't. You can't make that comparison, and I think that's where, then maybe it's because Wyndham doesn't have other elected positions that are actual jobs. I mean, the state senator, they have a salary because they actually have, but even them can show up or not show up and nothing happens. If we don't show up, we have a legal problem. We have actual responsibilities, and a lot of them that the town council members, the Board of Finance, Board of Education don't necessarily have. They should have certain things required to show up, but if they don't, they don't, and it's not day-to-day work. You can be on the town council, you can be on the Board of Finance, you can be on the Board of Education and still have a full-time job or run a business. You can't be in the registrar of voters office and have a full-time job because there's too much required of you. This is the job. It's an actual full job. And I think that's where there's a disconnect there with the understanding of what's required in this job. You cannot compare it to these other positions.
Right. And you talk about. I'm going to take it off speakerphone. You got to take it off speakerphone.
Okay.
There we go. So you talk about the difference in the jobs, and that's kind of what you talk about the difference in the jobs. We're getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if you have your radio on.
I fixed it. When I took it off speakerphone, I had to adjust it in the car.
So I think that's a big misunderstanding with a lot of us. I'm during the day. I'm not a politician during the day. I would starve. But the registrar's office, like you say, it's has become because of mandates and second locations and all this stuff. It's become a job that so somebody who is trying to support a family, or we always talk about that we've got to increase wages for all our jobs in town. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. When they look at the registrars, they say, well, you're elected. You know what you're dealing with. So you're right. There is a hypocrisy there.
And I don't think it's a lack of understanding at this point. It's become very personal. And it's very obvious by some of the things that have been said by members. I know there were things said about me I wasn't even in the state. And there were comments made about me during the last meeting. There have been a lot of comments that, you've gone over before with, the Democratic Party trying to control the registrar's office and things like that. And we're getting to the point where it's almost like anyone who's ever been shopping with a 5-year-old and they just want something. They want to leave the store with something. They're getting something, whether it could start out with a Barbie doll or a game or a Twizzler, to the point of flashlight at the cash register. They just want something in their hand when they leave the store. And that's what we're dealing with the Democratic Town Committee right now, is they're leaving with something. They are just asking for ridiculousness now. They're on one hand claiming that you shouldn't have early voting at the town hall because there's no parking, and then trying to insist that we have early voting at they want a location at Wyndham Heights where there's definitely no parking. They're not even making any sense. They're just crying, give me something. They just want a yes for something. They want something that they want with no logistics behind it, they don't care if it makes sense. They don't care if it hurts. I think that they actually came right out and said they don't care about the cost to the taxpayers. We can't even pass a budget, and we're demanding foolishness just because they're like that 5-year-old in the store. They're leaving with something. They don't care what it is. Give me anything. I took my kids once to Home Depot, and they got these little connectors for PVC pipe, and they put them on their wrists like they were bracelets because they just wanted something. They didn't care what it was. They put stickers on it, and they had little bracelets, and they were silly, but they were leaving with something. That's what we're dealing with right now.
We're talking with Kimberly Desaulniers, the Republican Registrar of Voters here on WILI. You bring up an interesting point that I've heard come up at multiple town council meetings when they're talking about the registrar's office. A push for additional polling places, which now I come from a background where I've moved a lot. Wyndham's my home; it's always been my home. But just for work and for life, I've been in big cities. I've been in tiny towns, and I've got to see how elections are run in different places. It's my experience that towns of a similar size, or maybe a hair smaller, here in Connecticut, may only have one polling place, whereas Wyndham has multiple. And then when I live in cities, I have to go many neighborhoods over and wait in ridiculously long lines. I'm talking about sometimes hours, depending on the time of day, to wait in a line and vote. But I'm hearing a push here in town from some elected officials for additional polling places. What have you heard, Kimberly, about this push, and what in your experience as a registrar of voters, what goes into choosing a polling place and how many there should be?
So we're broken up. There's a lot of factors. We're broken up by the number of voters we have, the number of voters in each district. We have 4 districts in Wyndham. We have 3 polling locations. The Elks Lodge hosts 2 polling locations. Number one, you have to have the space available. Mm-hmm. Even if you separated districts, which you can't just willy-nilly go and start adding polling locations. You redistrict every 10 years. Even if you wanted to start breaking up districts and do extra ones, you have to make sure it makes sense geographically. Right now, we have 2 early voting locations. The town is, 20-some-odd square miles. We have 2 early voting locations half a mile from each other. That makes no sense. It doesn't make geographical sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. But they're fighting to keep it. So you'd have to look at where the voters are, look at locations that you're not going to put 2 locations next door to each other. That doesn't make sense. You're not going to have an entire district District 4 going into the Wyndham Heights to vote. That doesn't make any sense. The parking's not there. The availability is not there. It's not convenient. You're not going to do that. I want to say there's 120, 150 maybe active voters in Wyndham Heights, and they want to push an entire district in there. It doesn't make sense. And I don't think that the residents of Wyndham Heights would appreciate it either. All those cars coming in and out all day long. Their kids are playing in the playgrounds. Their kids are crossing the streets. Why would you ever introduce all that traffic into there for a voting location? It makes absolutely no sense when children are running around playing. So there's a lot that goes into it. One important thing I want to say is we don't get complaints about polling locations. We do not get it. This is something that some members of the Democratic Town Committee have manufactured on their own. We have zero complaints. The public doesn't call us and complain that they don't like the polling locations. They don't call us and complain that they're waiting in line. They don't call us and complain about the early voting location. Only one person, May Flexer, has ever complained about the early voting location that she can't find her way around. She can't navigate the town hall. Nobody else does. Young people, older people, middle people, there's no complaints. Everybody seems to be fine. Even if they get a little bit turned around, we're able to help them. They don't complain. They leave happy. The people overwhelmingly have preferred the town hall over the ECSU location. Nobody seems to really want to vote there. It's not convenient. It's not convenient for the students. Again, why would you introduce all that traffic going in and out of a college where students are walking around and trying to get to their class? Now you're introducing distracted drivers trying to figure out what they're going into that area, and it's not safe for the students. It doesn't make sense. The locations we have work well. People are happy with them. Or if they're not coming to us and complaining about them. There are no complaints.
Is there any data that's come about long wait times or people missing voting because of inability to find parking? Is there any argument that is being made? Because we're hearing that a lot, very specifically from town council members, that they want additional polling places.
Right.
There was a quote, the last one, we haven't seen any new polling places in a while. And that was one of the criticisms about regarding your pay.
Yeah, you don't just pop up new. I don't even understand that theory. We haven't seen them in a while. You're not going to, and you don't see them in other towns either. The polling places are the polling places. You don't just add new ones every year. It's not like adding to your shoe collection. They're what they are. They cost money to run. We have to find staff for them. And in fact, funny, I believe that Mr. Prose made the comment that there weren't lines as his reason for wanting new polling locations, because there weren't lines at the other ones. So the other ones should be shrunking down, and we should have these pop-up locations everywhere since there weren't lines, which doesn't make sense. And another thing that they're missing is there's a minimum number of employees at a polling location that are required by law. They have this idea that if you just put one booth out, you could have less employees, and it doesn't work that way. And even if you popped up 10 voting locations all across town, whatever number of people you have, that if you put 2 District 5 polling locations, and you have, and this number I'm just throwing out there because it's not going to be correct, but say you have 3,000 District 5 voters, and you put 2 District 5 polling locations, they have this idea that means 1,500 at each. That's not how that works. Both locations have to be prepared to take 3,000 people, because you don't have any way of knowing. When we have 10,000 voters, we have 2 early voting locations. You don't equip them to take 5,000 each. You have to make sure they can both take 10,000.
Gotcha. So we're going to have to come to a commercial break right now here on WILI 1400 AM, 95.3 FM. But I hope you all turn back in, and our phone lines will be open when we come back. Thank you. We're back on Unfiltered on WILI 1400 AM, 95.3 FM on Unfiltered, and we're still on the other line. We've got Kimberly Desaulniers. She's the registrar of voters in town for the Republicans. There's 2 registrars. We have a Democrat registrar and a Republican. And we've got Curtis Ehler still in studio.
Yeah, happy to be here talking with Kimberly, because there's just a lot of questions about what's going on with the registrar of voters office, what all this additional work that the office has, but we still haven't, for some reason, resolved the issue of that office's pay. So, Kimberly, we were talking when we were on commercial break about how much work has been added in the last last few election cycles with this early voting. Now, I don't think most listeners, now obviously most listeners don't early vote.
Right.
So they might have no idea that when we talk about early voting, we're not talking about an additional day. We're talking about weeks. Can you walk through us how much additional work these early voting locations are, and all the staffing that goes into it, and what additional load that is brought upon the registrar's office?
Yes, so we have it's basically like you are having, instead of one election day in November, you're having 15 of them. You are all the staff that we have, one polling location, we now have to have that same staff. So you're looking at 7-ish, depending on the election, at least 7 people a day per location. Sometimes a little bit more, but you're not going to have less than 7. For 7 days straight for a primary, or for 14 days straight. So we have to hire those people. We have to train them. We have to staff. We have to organize the schedules. We have to handle all of our own HR issues. This one doesn't want to work with that one. This one doesn't like this one. This one can't do here. This one called in sick. We're a completely self-contained office. We don't have everything that we do, our payroll to pay these people, hiring them, dealing with all of the problems. When somebody calls in sick, somebody calls in at 3 a.m. that they're not coming to election day, that's us up at 3 a.m. dealing with it and trying to find replacements and scrambling to find them. Everything that happens within our office is contained to our office. There's no additional personnel that helps us. We don't send people to HR. All of that is us. And it used to be one day. Now, all of the work that we used to do to prepare in those weeks before the election, you now have to push that back. It still has to be done. We just have to push it back farther. We have 3 long-term care facilities in town. Those people have the right to vote, and that can take a very long time because we have to, both of us at the same time. So you have to coordinate your schedules because you need a Democrat and a Republican to go into those places to give, they need to have all the time that they need to have and have assistance if they need it. So those are at least 3 full days in long-term care facilities. And that is work that can't be done until the ballots are ready. You can't just take ballots. There are statutes telling you when you can take the ballot to a nursing home. And even though the registrars asked the state to release those ballots earlier, now that we have early voting to take care of the nursing homes, they failed to do so. So everything that we did before, you're multiplying it by either 7 days or 14 days and pushing everything back. So when we have, last year we worked for 40 days straight with no weekends, no holidays. We worked 40 days straight. The rest of the town hall works for 4 days in a row, and then they have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, and they have holidays off. We did 40 days with no days off. I'm assuming most of the rest of the town is 5 days. I don't know every department, so I don't know if some of them do work the weekends. I'm sure they do. The library's open on Saturdays, I think. But for the most part, everybody else is 4 to 5 days. There isn't anybody else who works 40 days straight. And those shorter days are about 12-hour days. Some of them go up to, on a presidential election, we were over 23 hours straight. We did not, we were up and ready and getting things to the polling locations around 3 a.m., and we did not leave there till after 2 a.m. by the time everything's done, because there's laws. And once you start counting ballots, you can't just stop. There are statutes in place telling us what we need to do.
Now, are we seeing a big increase? I mean, I know this next one coming up is it's just a primary, a Democrat primary. But do you anticipate, with the 2 locations and now giving the college student that the ability to be right on campus and everything for this Democrat primary, are you expecting a big influx of voters on that campus?
I am not, personally. So college students, the big turnout for college students is generally election day, and usually just for the primary, maybe for the gubernatorial, but it's election day because usually college students intend to vote at home up until the very last minute. They're busy. They've got their classes going on. They intended to vote at home or do an absentee ballot. And then last minute, they realize that they ran out of time. And then they come to Election Day registration on Election Day. And that's when we get the most college students. In November, we had 14 days of early voting at the college campus, and not one single student came to vote. It was we had some poll workers voted there because they were there, family members of poll workers who decided to vote there so they could wave hi to their family member when they came in, and a few specific politicians who did it to prove a point. I know one or two claimed, the mayor claimed that it was easier, but realistically, he was in town hall the day that he voted up. So I don't know how it was easier to make a second stop. That really doesn't make much sense.
Right.
But it was easier for him, so that's fine. Even if it is easier for a handful of people, the cost to the taxpayers as a whole doesn't make sense. The college dorms, there's dorms down there at the bottom that are literally almost attached to the town hall parking lot. There's a gate they can walk through. It's actually closer for them to vote at the town hall than to go all the way up to the location near the library.
Right. What about with this early voting for this primary on the college campus? That's got to be beneficial to the students because they're doing classes and everything right during the primary.
Not the first week of August. They're not. The taxpayers in Windham are going to fund 7 days of early voting at Eastern Connecticut State University the first week of August. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure that the dorms are closed the first week of August. While there may be a handful of people there, I don't think that I'm pretty sure that the dorms are closed the first week of August. Classes haven't started. I don't think that anybody lives at the campus the first week of August. We're talking August 3rd through August 9th.
So, and now when we get into situations like this, because I understand certain people up in Hartford that are part of the state government, that's their priority, getting college students out to vote, giving them every opportunity. If that's their persuasion, so be it. However, are there any sort of exceptions written into this new law about early voting locations for college campuses when the college isn't even in session?
There are not, and I believe that one of the members of the Board of Finance did attempt, or he might not be Board of Finance, maybe Windham Taxing District, did attempt to look into it with the state and was told no, that we were still required to hold 7 days of early voting at the expense of our taxpayers when the college is closed. Or, I mean, I'm sure that there are things, I don't want to say closed because somebody's going to quote me that I lied, but I know that there are summer classes and that there are things going on, but the law says that it's based on how many students live in the dorms. I believe it's 1,000 plus students in the dorms that the law applies to. There's 5 towns. And while the college itself is open and there may be classes going on, and I could be wrong, but I'm almost certain that there's nobody living in the dorms.
Wow.
And even in November, when there were people living in the dorms, they didn't vote at the college.
How many college students, if you were to take a rough guess, because we asked the other registrar, and he didn't have the numbers on him. Totally understandable. And I know if you don't have the numbers on you, then I'm not going to hold you to it. But if you were to take a guess, how many college students took advantage of the early voting? Did we get 1,000 of them? Did we get 1,500 voters out of this at least?
In this past November?
Yes, for the as far as just college students.
Voting for this past November, there were exactly 0 college students that voted at Eastern.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
So I have that number.
Pretty solid.
I don't have it in front of me, but I remember it was 0.
Wow.
And even during the presidential, the number was low. I'm trying to think for early voting, which it was not at the college. Mm-hmm. It was at the town hall, which was right there close, but the number of students, it was low.
Okay. So that there's a big expense then, and it follows up other expenses that are needed. And
it's a disservice to the college students to encourage them college students can vote. It's their choice, 100%. They can vote here, they can vote at home. But to try to encourage college students to vote where their campus is as opposed to where they're going to return to is a terrible disservice to them. They're not being given all the information. They can vote where they want, but it would make more sense to them to vote in the district that they're going to return to. Because if you live in Greenwich and you're just going to Eastern this semester and then you're done, why would you want to vote on representatives for this town specific or for this district specific? Because that doesn't have anything to do with you over in Greenwich. You would think that they would want to encourage them to participate in their local politics, to participate and vote for those people that are going to be representing them for the next 2 years, 4 years, however many years. When it's the president, they just want to vote wherever they want to get a vote in on the president. They're a little bit less concerned. But there were a small handful of Eastern students that did in November, walk into the election site at Eastern. And then when they asked about the ballot and who it pertained to, they left because they realized that they really didn't know because it was local and they could have voted on that local. They 100% had the right to vote on that local ballot. They didn't want to.
Right.
They realized it was a local town ballot, a municipal ballot, and it didn't have anything to do with them, and they weren't interested.
Gotcha.
They want to vote where it matters to them.
How does this no excuse absentee ballot now? How does that affect early voting? How does that affect referendums? How does it affect general elections? Because I know there's a lot of confusions on that.
There's a lot of opinions on that, and that is we really don't know yet because it's new. In my personal opinion, this just being me as Kimberly, not anything from the registrar's office, I don't think it's going to matter because, let's face it, anybody who wanted to vote absentee ballot was voting absentee ballot. You didn't have to prove your reason. So if somebody wanted to vote an absentee ballot, all they had to do was check off one of the reasons. Nobody was going to ask you for evidence. I don't think that there's this huge amount of people that were coming to the polls because they thought that they weren't allowed to vote absentee ballot.
Right.
There's illness, there's taking a family member, there's working out of town. There's all kinds of reasons on there, and you didn't have to provide any evidence of those reasons. So anybody who really wanted to vote absentee ballot has been voting absentee ballot all along. So while you might have a handful of people that are like, oh, well, now we can all do it, I don't think most people prefer to vote in person. We will be using tabulator machines for early voting. At this point, this next election will have tabulator machines. So you are going to have people that are more comfortable because when people were putting their ballots into an envelope, they were uncomfortable. That being said, I can personally guarantee that our elections are solid in Windham. We are a great team. The two registrars that we have, we color code things, we double and triple check things. Our elections are solid. There's nothing to worry about. But people are still uncomfortable when they're putting in an envelope instead of putting it into the machine. So I don't think with the amount of people that question the envelope that you're going to get thousands of people that all of a sudden want to put their ballot in an envelope in the mail. I think people prefer to vote and put their ballot through a tabulator machine. I could be wrong. There are people that think that the numbers will increase.
We're talking with Kimberly Desaulniers, the Republican Registrar of Voters here in the town of Windham, and we're really happy that Kimberly's on and talking with us because there was an issue of her department, her office, and their pay. You can call it their salary. You can call it their stipend at the most recent town council meeting. Now, Kimberly, I understand you were out of town, but I'm sure you were paying close attention. The vote regarding your office's pay was 2 in favor and the rest abstaining from the town council. Is that generally correct?
That's what I was told. I was not there, but that's what I was told was the result.
So,
I was out of town on a family emergency.
There was a question of whether or not that means that the vote passes because it's just so rare anywhere, anytime that even half of the members of a board would abstain from an issue. But to have 9 out of virtually all of the members of the town council abstaining from an issue. You had mentioned earlier that that according to Robert's rules that the that the motion would have passed, that according to the charter, that there's a bigger question. Does your office have an official ruling yet about where that stands, where the issue of your pay stands in relation to the town of Wyndham?
We have not received an official ruling. However, we don't generally receive things like that. They usually just ignore us and hope we go away. I'm still waiting for clarification on my position from the town and from the attorney. So they're not going to just voluntarily probably come with information to us. According to the standing rules, it says anything not specifically mentioned follows Robert's rules. According to Robert's rules, the motion passes because abstentions are still part of the vote, but they're not part of the no vote. So you had enough people there for the vote, and abstentions aren't no's. So therefore, more than 50% of the votes were yes because it was 2-0. Abstentions don't count. 2-0. Abstentions count for the total number, but they're not no's. So they're claiming that there's something in the charter. I believe there's something in there in the charter, but I don't know that it's mentioned in the standing rules. The standing rule says anything not specifically mentioned here goes to Robert's rules. So it's not specifically mentioned there. I would think that it would revert to Robert's rules at that point or defer to Robert's rules. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with that. It was definitely a ridiculous game of Simon Says, because that many people don't just decide to abstain.
And just nothing we've seen before in recent times that I can remember.
No, and you
it
know
was kind of embarrassing.
This brings up an interesting point of when do we follow the charter and when do we not follow the charter? You know,
I think it depends on who we're trying to screw over.
You know, and
you should mention that.
Yeah, it is because you know when we talk about the charter, the Democrats. I brought out the charter that section 9-2, which we had talked about, which specifically states that you know the taxing district using the property pays for all real property gains and you know it repairs everything. But the entire town council ignored the charter. And this one here, where you know our standing rules say if it's not mentioned in standing rules, it falls back to Robert's rules. Now they're trying to you know pick apart some place in the charter where it says otherwise.
Right. Now we want to play with.
Now we're charter. So I personally believe that the town is opening themselves up for a huge litigation by doing this. You know, they've opened it up with the registrar's office. They've opened it up with the taxpayers of the Wyndhams, the first taxing district. I think they're really getting themselves into you know, this legal quicksand here. And the other thing is, you know, to go back to the other thing, I know you're the registrar, you don't have a lot to do with the safety complex, but you are a human. And, you know, just like the rest of us, if there is a health safety issue in that fire complex, in that safety complex, I am 100% up for let's do the change. Let's make the repairs. Let's get this done. However, I do feel that the proper person should be paying for it, as with anything else. You know, if I have an asbestos issue in my home, my neighbor doesn't pay for it. I pay for it. You know, and a lot of people bring up that, well, the Wyndhams use the ambulance, the Wyndhams use the dispatch. What they're failing to mention is the Wyndhams pay to use them services.
I think it's become a couple things. Number one, I think that they're just hoping that the people are stupid, that you won't notice the double dip. We're not stupid. People are paying more and more attention, you know, and you can't double dip. You can't have an arrangement for using the ambulance and then turn around and say, oh, but you used our ambulance, so now do this. If I rent a car from my neighbor and I'll give him $100 to use his car for the day, he can't then turn around and say, okay, you used my car, now you have to, you know, pay to paint my house. It doesn't work that way because the car, we already had an arrangement with the car, and that was the only arrangement. I really wish more people paid attention to things like that, and to the fact that the town council doesn't seem to care. And the same thing with the finance. When you ask them a question, they just stare back at you. They have the votes, and that's their attitude. We have the votes. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. They have no integrity. They have no humility. They don't care. They're standing up there. They're making fools out of themselves. They're embarrassing themselves. They're embarrassing the town, and they don't care. There's no way that they cannot understand when they're making these votes. I have actually had, when I've questioned the issues with our pay in the past, one of the council members, Rodney Alexander, I was questioning it to him, and he's like, but we gave it to you. No, you didn't give it to us. You voted against it. And he's like, oh, well, I didn't know. Well, why are you voting if you don't know? You shouldn't be, you should ask. You should ask those questions. Whenever there's a vote, there's time for conversation. And that particular vote, both, I believe, Curtis and, was it Curtis at the time? I don't know if it was Curtis or if it was Tony Santoli at the time. Might have been Tony. And Joe Pliss both made excellent points, and both made excellent points about the fact that contingency should be first come, first serve. You can't hold contingency in case somebody better wants it later. And these conversations happened, and they still voted the way that they voted. So you can't turn around after and say, we didn't get it, we didn't know, we thought we did this. And they're not even embarrassed by that. They will sit there and vote for things that they don't understand. Either they voted for something they didn't understand, or they lied after the fact. It's one of those two things. There's no in between. And to not care, say, oh, well, we have the votes, right or wrong. The same thing with this 9 people abstaining. That doesn't make any sense. That's foolishness. But they weren't even embarrassed to do it. Like, Billy says, put your hand up. Billy says, put your hand down. And they just do it without question. No, why are we doing this? This isn't right. This doesn't make any sense. You've got Randall Prose sitting there arguing that we shouldn't be paid for the work that we're doing. But at the same time, doesn't he work for the school district? And we're saying we can't afford sports for the kids, but he's pushing for a raise for himself, because the teachers want their raises at any cost. They don't care if the kids, there's money for the sports because the sports existed last year. The sports are already there. It's the raises that there's no money for, and if they have to take those sports away from the kids to have their raises, they'll do it. But at the same time, you have the same person who's part of that union is going to sit there, and I believe I'm correct? He works for the school district, for high school?
Yes.
Okay. There's that same person who is willing to take sports away from kids to have his raise is going to argue that we shouldn't be being paid for the work that we're doing because we're not making anywhere near the amount of money that they're making. We're very, very low paid. We're below the poverty line. And those are the kinds of things, they just don't make sense, and they don't care. They'll sit there and rattle these things off without making sense and hope nobody notices. Or else they don't notice. I don't know.
I'm going to tell you something. This has been an excellent show. The time has gone by way too fast, and we really thank you, Kimberly, for coming on and giving us this information, getting the information out to the public. And we'd love to have you on again. We'd love to have your counterpart on the show, or anybody else who wants to come out and explain what's going on. Give us their viewpoint, because this is Unfiltered on 95.3, 1400 AM, WILI. Thank you.